Hi, and welcome to the Psychic Hour, where you can get the answers to your most challenging questions concerning life, love, or the afterlife. Starring Cindi Sansone-Braff, the Romance Whisperer, a relationship expert with a twist. She talks to the dead to teach you how to live well and love better. Named Best Psychic 6 times by the Long Island Press, she is the author of Grant Me a Higher Love, Why Good People Can't Leave Bad Relationships, and Confessions of a Reluctant Long Island Psychic. Joining her tonight and always is the show's producer and host, Nicole Semidei. Nicole, a talented artist, writer, entrepreneur, and intuitive, shares her unique perspective on the Grant Me a Higher Love philosophy, which is the spiritual foundation of their show. Well, welcome to our show, and this is really an exciting one, by the way. Here, this is amazing. When she was on our show, that people that watched it live absolutely loved it, so we had to invite her back.
Of course.
So she could begin to talk to us a little about all the things that she does. But first of all, when I first met Maria, I was a little confused because she always uses the word we. So I had to ask her, why do you talk in the word we instead of I or me? It's we.
So in our tradition as a Lakota and Dene elder, we speak in the we is because in our traditions, we are always connected. Like this is a sacred ceremony now between you, Cindi, and Nicole and us. And it's a sacred ceremony of all your helpers, all our helpers, creating a council gathering of ancestors here. And it ripples 49 generations behind and 49 generations forward. And we are all related to all living beings at all times. So in our tradition, when we speak in the word I, we think of this mind as a trickster. And when people get caught in their heads, and that trickster, I, me, becomes the most important. And we forget that we're all related. We all bleed the same. We all want the same things. And so by speaking in the we, it helps remind us to always stay connected to spirit, to the great mystery, to Wakatanka.
I also love that it makes you feel and reminds you that you're always guided. You know, sometimes when we go through life, we feel like I'm alone, no one's there for me, no one's guiding me. But if you learn to say we, you're inviting every time you say that your spirits into you, but you're also reminding everyone that we're not alone. So I think that's a fascinating concept, don't you, Nicole? Fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really interesting. And now, your specialty seems to be in energy frequencies, correct? Understanding energy and the cellular level.
So our work, we work on a frequency level with energy. We were chosen very young because we could see things in people's bodies, and then they would get sick. And then we would get frightened, because we didn't understand at a very young age what was happening. Or we'd see things that were going to happen. We'd have visions or feelings, and then they would happen on the world stage. And we actually thought we were creating them. So we went underground for a very long time. And it took a long time, considering our age. Back then, if we had said we were seeing things and doing all these things, it would not have been accepted back then. So we were also taught, the people that raised us, that it was not okay for a woman to go to college. The only reason we found out about that was because we were a draft counselor, and we wound up showing up at a college and we saw other women there, and we said, oh, where are you coming from to do draft counseling? So we started as a resistant protester from very young. We were about 17. And they said, what? What do you mean? We're not draft counselors. We go to college. And I'm like, what? Women can go to college? because we were told to be barefoot and pregnant. That's what our purpose was for. So we have changed a lot of lifetimes in this lifetime. But the work that we
Absolutely.
do, we have visions, we can see, we can actually, when someone calls us, for example, we don't know anything about them but their name. We get a referral from a doctor or someone who knows us, or they find us on the internet, and we give them a page of things that they need to do and look at the website, and then we pray with them for one day.
Wow.
Because what's really important is one healer cannot help everyone.
No.
And if one healer says that they can, people should run away very fast. Because it has to be the right connection. And everyone has their own intuition or gut instinct. They may use different words or have different ways of talking about creation or using different language, whether it's God, whether it's Allah, we've worked with people from so many different traditions, whether it's Jesus, they're all the same. We all go back to the same place. And so once we pray, if they get a yes and we get a yes, then we set a date for a ceremony. And then we spend several days with them. Between 4 and 7, actually. It's often 7, because our bodies have frequencies. But first, what needs to happen is there's an emotional, spiritual, and mental frequencies that are all different. And when those go out of balance, then it starts to show up on the physical plane as an illness or disease. It's when it gets our attention, because the body is dense matter. And so that's when it says, okay, we can't handle this separation anymore. And that's when people get woken up with whatever it is. We've worked with people who have transplants, who need transplants. We've helped people get on the right list for transplants. We've worked with people who have cancer and beat it. We've worked with people who have ALS. We've worked with people who have lymphoma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. We've worked with people who just feel stuck. But we work a lot with people who have chronic illness, mold, Lyme, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia. I mean, we can tell you some amazing stories of the spirits that miracles can do and how these bodies know how to heal themselves if given the right guidance. And so by us learning those different frequencies and being with someone that many days, we get to see how their body and their cells and their mitochondria change moment by moment, depending on what situations they're in. So that when we go to enter their body, on the day that we're going to have the phone call, when we actually go into complete trance for 3 hours and we leave our body and enter into their body, we can enter into their body without creating any harm or disharmony, so they're in their most natural state. And then the spirits start talking. And it's very intense. People leave overwhelmed because they get their whole life handed to them on a platter.
Wow.
So
Well,
that's the main ceremony.
It's very difficult for healers because people do expect one healer to be able to do everything and, really can't. But I know when I'm doing readings, their spirit guides are in the room with me all the time. And
all the time.
When they say my whole body felt better and everything, I just energetically can see spirit working on the chakra system, removing unearned guilt from them, just getting in there and kind of rotor-rooting their whole body so that when I'm asking them a question, spirit wants to see their answer so that then they go, okay, that person has a block here, or that wasn't a healed answer. Let's go further. So it's a dialogue between me and my clients, but also spirit actually tweaking their bodies as it's going on, which is a really interesting concept, that they get energetic healing as well. And
yes,
sometimes I will tell people when they need a psychiatrist or a therapist, I'll tell them this is above my pay grade here. Okay, I'm very clear to say that because there's a time when I just know that this is not such a spiritual crisis here. This is something they really do need to deal with on a psychological basis, much more deep than I can do it. So sometimes people need a doctor. Sometimes they need a psychiatrist. Sometimes they need a psychic. But it's all things working together. Now, I found it interesting that the two of you both caught flus in the 2 weeks before this show. So, talking about what causes illness and disease, I would say mostly it's stress, okay? And taking in energies that are not good. And Nicole, you have not been doing so great about detaching from energy that's not yours. Yeah. So we have to learn the art of detaching so that their stress and their negativity and their negative frequencies does not go in us. And then just as when they're getting a reading from me, they're getting high frequency energy from the words and from spirit. Well, you're getting negative. That's doing the opposite.
Yep.
That's just undoing. Say you just went to yoga and you meditated and then you're with this person's energy who's bad. And if you don't detach, that is just going to get in you. So I think the book, two of you have a little assignment to start observing the people in your life who are stressing you. A little bit more of a distance. Well, and it's hard when we're family, like Nicole, when you were talking about family that does it to you.
Well, there's also a second step to that, though, too, and that's being able to look at people that are in your life without the rose-colored glasses, and that's being able to look at people in your life very objectively. Because sometimes we look at those in our lives and we don't realize that that's where that negativity is radiating from. Because sometimes that negativity could be so subversive that you don't know that that's where the origin is, and I think that that's kind of a pitfall that I fell into more recently, and that's because like I identified what the most flagrant and what the most obvious sources of that toxicity was, and I detached right away. I said, okay, I've had enough of this. This is not productive. This is not good for me. I'm feeling stressed. Like I'm getting chest pains and things like that. I'm getting muscle aches. I went from feeling wonderful to feeling terrible in the matter of a day. So you need to go. At least for a little while, you need to go. And I did that. But things would get marginally better. And then they would fall right back. And it was because I wasn't recognizing those little sneaky levels of toxicity radiating off of people where I needed to detach from. And I think we were talking before the show. I don't think that we recorded it, but I think before the show I said to both of you, and I'll say it again for our listeners, that it was wonderful when I was, to an extent, when I was ignorant, because then I was in bliss and I didn't know, and I could call upon ignorance, be like, yeah, I didn't know that. That's not my fault. But now I'm so hyper aware of certain things that I'm dissecting every little thing, and it's exhausting sometimes. Well, when the answers don't come easy, it's exhausting.
Well, also, we have been talking about in the year of energy, what Spirit has told me is stop exhausting yourself.
Yeah.
Everybody's psychiatrist nowadays. We psychoanalyze
When have you ever
everybody.
known me to do things the easy way?
Yeah. Stop psychoanalyzing why everybody's doing what they're doing.
When have you ever known me to do things easy?
Or a bad vibe. If they're giving off a bad vibe, detach.
Yeah.
But it's
and
also
observe them. Go ahead.
What's that, Maria?
It's also important that we learn how to self-cleanse.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it's using sage or Santa Pablo, there's so many things that we can cleanse ourselves with. Stones. If there is energy that is not healthy around us, beside making boundaries, it's also about cleansing. We do it with sage. Some do it with, other kinds of herbs and medicines. But we also do it with water. You just go with the sink with sacred mini Wichoni, the sacred water of life, and put your hands in and put your feet on the ground and ask that the water take anything that doesn't belong to you, that's not positive, any negativity, pull it out of your body through the water, through your hands, through your feet to the earth, so that the earth can take that energy that is not healthy and can transmute it into something that's clean, so it doesn't hurt the earth and it doesn't hurt someone else. But there's ways we should be all cleansing every single day, because every day different things are happening in our lives, different things are happening around the world, and different things are happening in different galaxies, and it all has an impact. We're multi-dimensional beings that work on many multiverses, especially if you're a sensitive, or especially if you have gifts. And so we don't even know sometimes what we're absorbing and why we're absorbing it.
And that's why even doing natural things like what we call joy therapy here and nature therapy, just going by the water, swimming in the water. You don't even have to be thinking so much, am I cleansing? You are cleansing. Spirit is there with you as you're playing, as you're joyful, because a very high energetic frequency is joy. And if you love the water, then you're bringing love, and then you feel peaceful. So all of those frequencies together do a lot to heal, yet don't really cost money. And it's just being aware that this isn't a luxury to just go by the water to get nature. So we have all these tools. And of course, Maria's very scientific and she's explaining it scientifically to us, but we knew it as children. We loved when we got to play in the water. We didn't care if it was a mud puddle. And that was dangerous in those days because we could have gotten polio, but we didn't care. We wanted to play in the mud puddle. So children know what makes them happy. So the two of you need to get back to some of that when you're very stressed out with families and obligations and work, is when we don't do the 10 or 15 minutes of cleansing each day. That's all it takes. Then we're going to get sick.
One of the things that's also really important is for people to get off their electronics. It's absolutely critical for your health. Off electronics. Create grid time free, no electronics. It's so incredibly soothing, and using breath work is also really important in understanding cellular healing.
Can you explain the breath work a little bit?
So we teach something that's called the Standstill Nation. It was one of the things that was given to us when we were on an 8-day fast, and it has 64 steps. But the initial thing is, think about the standstill people. You call them the trees, right? We are fashioned very much like them. If we stand with our feet on the ground and imagine growing roots into the belly of Grandmother Earth, we can soak up that energy that's regenerative and pull it up through the back of our legs, all the way up, counting 7, all the way up the back, all the way up to the top of our head. And then we hold it to the count of 4, and there's a reason for that spiritually. And then we let creation, grandfather's energy from the sun, pour in and mix with grandmother's energy. And then we let that flow over our face. One is regenerative energy coming in to restore everything. And then once this ball drops after we count 4, we breathe out through our nose and down. The ball comes cleaning inside and outside anything that doesn't serve us, in and out of every organ and every pore and every mitochondria, all the way down through our body, through our legs, through our hips, through our organs, down through our knees, and then out through our toes and down into the earth again. So it gets retransmuted. And what that does when we do that 9 times, the numbers are very significant with Pythagorean theorem and sacred geometry and all of these kinds of things. They all work together. But even if people don't have that 8 minutes to do that, even sitting down and doing metronomic breathing, like taking a deep breath in, inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, exhale through the nose, 1, 2, 3, 4, and doing that several times. What happens is the breath actually starts to slow down the sympathetic nervous system, which is critical for the body to calm. and for the parasympathetic to come back online. So breath work is really, there's a lot of tools. Just put a metronome on your phone and it'll count for you those 4 breaths, and do it 9 times, because 9 is the number of beginnings and endings.
Wow.
And that's what we want. We want things to begin, and we want the negativity or whatever we've attached to let go.
Now, Nicole, didn't you just feel like tranced and relaxed when she did that?
I did.
It was like 30 seconds. So we don't take the minute here or the minute there to take deep breaths. You know, step outside and get air for 5 minutes. These are like little mini healing breaks, and they're not being lazy and they're not being childlike or foolish. But in a busy day, we just get so busy, so busy, so busy. But those are the days taking 5 minutes here, 2 minutes there would prevent us from getting sick. So I really think what Maria is telling us is find the little rituals, the small things that you could go in your bathroom at work and do it. You don't have to have a sacred space to be doing these things. You do it wherever you are. You're on the train, you're on the subway. You know, these are what replenishes us throughout the day. So I had a funny feeling that my 2 beautiful women sitting here probably were not doing enough of that for the few weeks before they got ill. And sometimes it's when we're dealing with family, and Nicole said something very funny earlier, how people push her buttons, and I'm like, family members, yeah, well, they program those buttons, honey. So
it's like speed dials. It's like speed dials in my attitude.
Right. So when someone's been pushing our buttons, we need to really step back and do our breath work, like Maria was saying, because when we do that, naturally the detachment comes. It really does help. And I'm going to say that word over and over again this year. We have to start observing certain people as if they're a TV series that we're watching. I don't care if they're a family. We're not the writers of that script. We can't alter it. Some episodes are going to be better than others, but we can't always get so enmeshed with everyone else's problems, because old souls, then what happens is we neglect our own soul. We don't do joy therapy, nature therapy, quiet therapy. We don't breathe. And we're so overwhelmed and depleted, and we're of no use for anyone. So it's really giving yourself that oxygen first a little bit so that you don't get so depleted. And as Maria was saying, women have a lot on their plates now. We were raised in a time where you were going to, have babies and that was it. And, a family and your husband was going to take care of you. Then all of a sudden the world shifted. So, we had babies and we had families and we took care of the house and we got educated and we worked. It didn't get easier. It got exhausting for women. So that in order to juggle all of those balls all day long, we keep cutting corners. Well, I don't really need to work out today, and I don't really need to eat something good, and I don't really need to breathe, and I don't really need to do my yoga. We could conceivably work 24/7 in a day without ever thinking of ourselves, and that's, I think, is making women very stressed out, sick, run down, and it catches up with us. So,
well, I think it's also a product of the time that we're living in as well. We're living in a time where we are always connected, and not in a good way. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful idea that we're constantly connected to one another and things like that, but we're connected to all of the wrong things. And all of the toxicity and all of the drama is put in front of us all the time. Even in workplace situations, unless you're working 24/7, you're not working hard enough in today's culture, and I think that some of the wisdom that Maria is giving us today is not necessarily because she's a doctor. I think that a lot of it is the fact that she has not lost that sense of her indigenous culture, because indigenous culture, has invaluable wisdom and traditions and a way of understanding the world that much differently than the way that we understand the world today, because they've passed this down for generations. And I think that, you know, indigenous cultures have just got overall knowledge of the ecosystem, of medicinal plants. Not everything is a happy pill that you have to run to a doctor for. There are things within nature that can heal us and that can ground us. You know, and I think that those sustainable living practices within that culture really need to be taught, because in our culture, in today's society, you work yourself until you're sick. You don't enjoy your life until you're too old to, you don't even think about enjoying your life until you're too old to do it. Live to work instead of work to live, and all those things. And, we've lost that notion. We've lost that sense of it's okay to slow down. It's okay to take a breath. It's okay to reset, and sometimes the answer isn't going faster. Sometimes the answer is to go slower.
Going.
So that you
Absolutely.
can see things in a broader sense.
Absolutely, Nicole. I mean, there's a joke on the res when we do ceremonies, is like, when we used to have a sweat lodge in Colorado, now that we're in California, we're still looking for land. And you set a time for the sweat lodge. And then there's the time it's really going to start, which is whenever everything gets done. And it may be set for 10 o'clock, it may be set for 1 o'clock, and it may not start till 3 o'clock, because every stone has to be asked, do you want to sacrifice yourself for the sweat lodge? Do you want to take on everybody's burden? You have to go stone by stone by stone and actually talk to them. That takes time.
Yeah.
Then you're building a fire, and you're talking to the fire, and you're putting in tobacco, and then people are gathering, and then you get into the sweat lodge, and everybody has special prayers that they need, that they want everyone to join in on. And the 4-hour sweat lodge becomes a 5-hour sweat lodge. And then you get out, and you're so grateful because the Star Nation people are out by the time you get out, and you feel like you have a blanket of energy that is just so crystal clear. And everybody feels so rejuvenated. And the same thing happens at Sundance when we have to dance our prayers. And, this body is the only thing we're given that we own. Everything else is superfluous. And so at Sundance, it's about dancing your prayers. And you're up at 4 a.m. in the morning with no food and water in 120-degree heat for 4 days and 4 nights. And you don't even
awesome.
miss it.
It really does. Yeah.
Because at one point, no matter what culture you grew up in, we all lived off the land. It's not as if the indigenous people are the only ones who know how to do this.
Yeah.
The Celtics, the Italians, everyone, all the tribes, the Israeli tribes, all the tribal people, everybody was tribal. But the electronics and industrialization have helped us separate from spirit. And it's just about starting off the morning. Oh my God, I'm getting to open my eyes and go through a whole list of the gratefulness of just, thank you so much for giving me another day to live. Thank you again for giving me another day to serve. Help me.
That's absent in people today. They don't know how to serve others. They serve themselves.
Well, that's the I's. That's not the we's. You both are we's. You may not speak in the we's, but you're we's.
Yeah.
And maybe you should start using the word we's.
We.
Yeah.
Instead of
We,
I.
because that's who you are.
Me,
And the
me,
more
me.
we all do that, the more we educate everyone around us to start thinking differently. When we say we, they're like, how many are going to be in the room? I said, just this little old grandma. And they're like, oh, it sounds like it gets very crowded. I said, well, actually, it really gets crowded because there's a lot of helpers that come.
A we world and not a me world, I think, is what we need to strive for.
Yeah.
But I love what she was describing because you felt community.
Yes.
What's missing for a lot of people is there's no community, and people don't leave the house anymore. And it's wonderful to work from remote, but they don't leave. They DoorDash their food, everything's delivered. And all those energy infusions you get when you go about your life, interacting with other people, saying hello, asking how they are, feeling like you knew people. I think that's really missing. So I imagine it's very healing just for people to come and spend 5 or 6 days in a community together.
It is. It's
In a
enormously
community that's
healing.
not online.
It's online.
And it's
That's
not
the
online.
important thing. That's not online. Being face to face with human interaction, human touch. We misuse the gift that is technology. We could be using technology the way that we're using it now to connect when we're far away and things like that and have meaningful discussion. Instead, people go there and it's all about the drama. It's about how mean could I get to the next person. It's about I have an opinion, therefore everybody must agree with me and must listen to it. And it's very, very toxic. And it's a wonderful gift that we have to stay connected, and we use it in the worst possible way.
Oftentimes.
Again, so just like slowing down is sometimes the answer, sometimes you just have to go old school and actually sit down face to face with someone and try to have a conversation. That doesn't happen often.
Who are so connected to do this as much.
Nope, not at all.
Now, Maria, we did start talking a little bit about what causes illness or disease.
I like that.
I know. And what do you think besides stress contributes to disease?
Well, there are several things. When that separation between the spiritual, emotional frequencies and the physical gets too separated, sometimes we process like the mountain in the lake. We'll work with the top of the mountain where we can see, but there's a whole mountain under the lake. And we don't want to do that deeper work because it's time consuming, it's overwhelming. We don't have the luxury of whatever to do it. And so we put it away. And what happens is we split apart that way. And so at different ages, we split apart and we never go back and retrieve those parts of the excess emotion. Because Creator gave us this whole wide range of emotion, from murderous rage to ecstatic joy, 360 all the way around beyond our fingertips. We're supposed to feel all that. Just because we feel murderous rage doesn't mean we have to commit it. But we know in a heartbeat that if someone were to hurt one of our children, they would be down. And then we would think about it. So we know that we're capable of it. And we say that to our clients all the time. It's like, you need to own that you have that kind of passion, that kind of rage. But it also sits in us when we don't express it. And so rage is a big piece of a lot of disease and illness. People who have cancer have 5 different things that we see in every client we've ever diagnosed with cancer. There are definite things that just because you have a genetic predisposition, certain organs are weaker than others, doesn't mean epigenetically that it has to manifest. But if you're not cleaning house on a regular basis, and not swallowing your feelings and not owning them in their totality because it's not timely, it's not convenient, it's going to hurt someone's feelings, not being honest, then you lose your own self-integrity to take care of yourself.
Well, I think too that it's also that whole thing is kind of twofold, because you have like the analogy that you use, with the mountain, but I'm going to use the iceberg because the tip of the iceberg is the smallest part. There's a much bigger, there's a much bigger piece below the surface, and I think that those negative emotions that we feel, that we're repressing, we're aware of the repressed emotions. We're aware that we're stuffing down grief, and that we're stuffing down anger. But I think that there's also a psychosomatic response. And I think that there is definitely unresolved emotional distress there. But I think that there's just, it's I think it's completely psychosomatic to the point of where we're not aware that we're stuffing it down. It's just there and we don't ever remember putting it there. So I think that there's got to be a certain degree, not only of being willing to release the anger, but it's got to be a willingness to self-observe, to self-explore, and to find anger that you don't even know is there. Find the source of something that makes you the most uncomfortable, and then release it. Because you can say, yes, I'm aware of A, B, and C, and release it, but if you don't take care of what's below that surface, you're still going to get a negative response. You're still gonna find yourself at the deficit there, and you're not going to understand why, because you're going to say to yourself, well, I faced these things. I've released them. Why am I still like this? Clearly that didn't work. Meanwhile, there's a whole set of things that you're not even aware you're doing. So I think that it's got to be twofold. You have to be able to look at what you are aware that you're stuffing down and release it, but then you also have to look at that psychosomatic response, and you have to say, okay, what else could be lurking beneath that surface, and let's go into that too. Because if there's anything there that I don't want, I need to be able to release that too, even if I'm unaware of it.
Stuff down anger, I think denial of your feelings is part of the source. Past trauma that we have not dealt with, and keep bringing past trauma into the present. That's where talk therapy fails sometimes. We could talk about it. You talk about it once, you talked about it twice, you talked about it 30 times. Stop talking about it, because you're bringing it into the now.
Yeah.
If you've talked about it, and you've healed it, it goes in a past life. But to keep doing it, it's a scab you pick at that bleeds, that never stops bleeding, and you never form a scar. So living in the now, which is the energy of peace, not in the past with all your, if only this didn't happen, if only that, living in the future, worrying constantly. This all drains us. And I think when Nicole and I were talking before the show started, we were talking about toxic energy. We have to recognize when we're near toxic energy. And in recognizing it, we can detach from it. It's not the same as denying, which we were taught as children. Like we would say, oh, that person's a bad vibe. And your mom would say, oh, no, she's lovely. And meanwhile, then we didn't trust our gut. And then we had to deny what we felt. So if we don't deny toxic energies, it won't make us sick. It's when we're trying not to see, and you talked about the rose-colored glasses, when we're trying not to see what we need to see. That is so much repression, suppression, denial, which are wonderful mechanisms for children. But when we're grown-ups, we have to stop using those, because that stresses us out.
Oh, yeah.
And Maria, with her degree in psychology, I'm sure she knows what I'm talking about.
So this woman had a profound experience and wanted her husband to have something equally profound for him, because he had a medical issue, although we didn't know that. And then we said, we talked to him privately and said, look, you have to want this for yourself. Your wife can't want it for you. You have to be willing to step into this circle. So he said, no, I want to do this. And I said, okay. So we knew that we were partially halfway through his body. He had 1 foot in and 1 foot out. He was kind of, ho-humming it. And then we got into his liver, and everything started lighting up. And
wow.
We said, we see a teacher in your liver. Now, he's 70 years old. And when was the last time he thought about a teacher? He hadn't been in school in a long time. And we said, give us a moment. We're going to peel some cells back to see if we can get more information about who this teacher was to you. So we peeled back more cells with the spirits, and we went deeper into his liver, and we said, she was a woman teacher, and she humiliated you. And at that moment, he sobbed so profoundly.
Wow.
And he couldn't even get the words out. And he finally spoke.
Wow.
And said, she used to put me in front of the classroom every day and humiliate me in front of the class for my entire grade. And he said, can we start the whole ceremony over from the top? I said, no, we're just going to keep going. But that's sometimes what it takes for people to understand you can forget things up here or work them out through your head in talk therapy, but that's not changing it
Oh,
at a
yeah.
cellular level. When he did that, when he connected to that little boy and sobbed like a little boy, it started to release. And he
Yep.
could feel all the grief and the pain and the humiliation, and then he could let it go.
And sometimes it's a very big trauma. You have to do what this man did. You have to cry. You have to go back to that 4-year-old or that 8-year-old, and you have to, as a grown-up, observe it from a. How could that child have? How could that child have gone through that with a teacher being so abusive the whole year? The child must have been very strong to survive that. And you look at yourself with compassion and understanding, and that begins to clear it in your body. And it's a lot of work. So some people don't want to do that work, but if you don't do the inner work, then you're going to be sick, and that's a lot of work too to be sick. So
But
you've
he
got
got
your
so
choice.
motivated because he had Hep C
Wow.
and he was
Wow.
in serious trouble.
Wow.
And he all of a sudden made the connection. And we said, you swallowed so much rage at this teacher because you had no place to let it out. It wasn't safe.
No.
And by the time we finished
No.
working together, doing deep emotional work, his Hep C disappeared. The doctors couldn't figure out what happened to it. But
Talk
that's
about a
the
mind-body
body can do
connection.
that. The body can do that.
Oh,
We
sure.
have-
We knew our body healed ourselves when we were children, and we scraped our knee. If we stopped picking at it, it was going to heal. How did we know that at 2 years old? We had no doubt that boo-boo wasn't going to be there forever. We just knew it.
Yeah.
So if we knew this as babies, how did we forget the body's a miraculous healing machine?
It's
Okay? It's what it's
Well, think
supposed to
about
do.
right at this moment. How many things is all our bodies are doing right now without any direction?
Right.
Millions of interactions, dendrites, different things, all these things that are passing through, as well as all the emotions, all the excitement of being together again, the three of us, all the joy of that. And that's all coming through, weaving in and out. And we're not directing any of it. We're just
No.
open to it.
Right, exactly. Now, you had a question you wanted us to ask you what your 4 tenets of belief or bias is.
Ooh.
So I wasn't sure what that question even meant, so maybe you can clarify it for us.
Well, first we believe that we're all divinely guided, which you both know. We are all divinely guided. Even the harshest things that might be happening in our lives are being done to teach us something. And we have to reframe them and try to understand from spirit, what is this? What are we supposed to learn from this? So that's the first. We're all divinely guided. The second is nothing is impossible.
I like that.
Nothing is impossible. So if we're texting and you text, the word impossible, I am possible, that's what impossible means. Turn it around, reframe it. And we are all here, we have all chosen to be here at this time in our lives to help co-create what is really necessary for humanity. We believe that. We've all chosen to come together at this time. No accidents. Even an accident, there's not even an accident. What part of your body absorbs an accident? There are no accidents.
Oh, absolutely.
And the fourth is, we were not sent here to survive. We were sent here to thrive. And that's our job, to thrive, to love and be loved. But we also have to allow that. We also have to believe that. So we need to say that that's part of our bias, because we really come from that place of belief.
Absolutely.
I like that.
That's
And we
That's our
are
tenets.
always guided every moment of the day. And basically, if we would get rid of the 80% of thoughts that are useless, going over the past, worrying about the future, fretting over everything, we would hear more of what's being said. But it's just every choice we make is guidance. Spirit is telling us, but are we listening? Most of the time, not. We choose, I don't feel like doing it. You know, humans tend to have a defiant personality disorder. Okay? They want to say no. I think we never outgrew mommy told us to do too much and we just want to say no, 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 like a 2-year-old. So sometimes, you know, you called it your inner saboteur today, Nicole, but I'm going to call it your defiant personality disorder.
Okay.
That feels like saying, well, I don't want to be the better me and I don't want any guidance telling me what to do and I'm going to do it my way, even though it hasn't worked for 20 years. So we have to really examine that little negative 2-year-old that's saying no to everything. And when we hear spirit, it's not always what we want to hear. Some people want to hear, oh, it's okay, I'm eating that. No, it's not. And there's an expression, we stuff our face when we don't face our stuff. Okay?
I like that.
Right? And sometimes we have to realize, why am I doing this?
That's what happens when we give the blueprint. We actually explain why people are doing what they're doing to their different organs and what the impact is, because it's so unconscious. And sometimes it's so generational that they don't even, there's no way that they would even know.
So maybe we have to reset our minds that we don't have to just do self-care because we're sick. Now we have to eat extra well and we have to, you know, do our herbal things. We should be doing these things all along, these little self-care, self-love.
We have a website. It's www.Dr. Maria, M-A-R-I-A, Michael, M-I-C-H-A-E-L, just our name. We have an email. That's Dr., no punctuation, all small letters, Dr. Michael, M-I-C-H-A-E-L, at drmariamichael.com. That's the best way to reach us.
Well, this has been extraordinary.
Yes.
And lots about healing. And what I felt during this show is a very strong energy infusion of love and joy and peace. And I promised Nicole today that she would get an energy infusion that would lift her. And yesterday, when I knew that Dr. Michael was having so much going on, I said, well, we could postpone it. No, she's here. But, her, you know, her spirit guides wanted her here too because they were working on her and lifting her as she was lifting us. So I have a funny feeling anyone who listens to this, and if you feel very relaxed from your listening to this, listen again.